All right, we have our first live video for the Phoebe Quiltalong. I'm going to try to get some light going here. It was nice and bright earlier and it got really cloudy. I'm going to be talking about fabric selection for the Phoebe Quiltalong, and at any point, if you have any questions, post them in the comments and I'm going to try to make sure I answer all of the questions that are posted. So I actually have not decided 100% on my fabric for the Quiltalong, but my current thought is to use this Strawberry and Friends Fat Eighth bundle. All the mock-up or all the samples that I've made so far, I use a jelly roll. But you can use a fat eighth or a fat quarter. Jelly roll will give you the most fabric variety because usually a jelly roll is going to have more prints in it than a bundle. But if you had a really big bundle of fat eighths or fat quarters, you could use part of each one. You don't have to cut, this I think has, the pattern requires 20 fat eighths, and I think this is like 25. So if I wanted to cut a little fewer from some prints to, include all of the prints, I might do that. So that's my current plan. The only thing is I wanted to use something from my stash for the whole quilt. And I don't know if I have a background fabric that I would want to use with this. I have white, so I definitely could use that. It's nice that this collection doesn't have any prints in it that have a white background. So all these prints would stand out against the background fabric. So this is probably what I'm going to do. I do really like this collection. I love the florals in particular. And actually I have, before I bought this bundle, I bought a couple of the florals. So I would use one of these as the binding, probably the blue. I don't know. They're both good. So yeah, I'm probably going to use this. This is a nice thing about starting with a collection is that when a fabric designer releases a collection, usually they look for a lot of different things, but they want to have a variety of things like scale. So see how this is like a really tiny print. This is a little bit bigger. That's bigger. All within the same color. They have different scale, but then they also have different colors, which you've got there. And then they also have different value. So here's a dark value. Here's kind of a more mid-valued print. And there are also lighter valued prints. So when you buy a collection, usually it will have a good variety and you don't have to worry too much about those things in your quilt. What you'd want to think about is if you were going to narrow down your bundle into, I don't need all of these prints. I'd probably want to take 5 out. I want to make sure that I didn't take out 5 that then made it so that I had less variety in my print quilt. So I maybe wouldn't want to take out all of the 5 prints that were all really light, the lightest colors, or that were all the smallest scale prints, because I want to still have a variety of value, scale, color, all of those things in my quilt. So I would say that the type of print that is going to work least well in this quilt, and this is going to be true of any time you're going to use a jelly roll, is going to be a larger scale print. And just think about, you're only using a 2.5-inch strip, so you're going to get a really thin piece of that large scale print. So you can definitely use them, and will definitely use some of this print in the quilt if this is what I decide to use. But you want to make sure that you have a mix of larger scale prints and smaller scale prints so that you can see that they're the distinction between the two prints. They don't all blend in together. So if you are using a collection, the biggest decision that you need to make is what you want to use as your background fabric. So I wanted to talk about what does or doesn't work for a background fabric. So if I wanted to use a colored background fabric for my quilt, I want to make sure that it didn't match too closely to any of the main colors in the quilt. So if I wanted to use like a dark blue, I needed to make sure that it coordinates with this color, but that doesn't match this color, because otherwise the prints that have that as the background fabric will just blend into the background. So what I would probably pick if I were going to use this would be a pink that was somewhere between these two shades. And I actually had pulled this spark print thinking that maybe I would use it because I knew I had enough. But, and you can kind of see here, see how this is kind of more of a purpley pink and this is more of a peachy pink? I don't like them together, so I wouldn't use this as my fabric because I don't feel like it goes well. It looks fine with some of the colors, like it would look fine with this one, but overall, I don't like it. It's not a good fit for this print. So this collection. So if I were going to use this collection, which I probably will, I'm probably just going to use a white background fabric. I know that's boring, but I'm boring. I'll probably use something like this. I think this is Art Gallery linen, or I might just use a plain white. So obviously this isn't enough. I need to look and see what I've got. I definitely have I have a few other options that are Ruby Star Basics. Like I've got some of this white speckled, so I could use that. And I have some added up fabric. I could use that, but I think this may work better with a brighter white. So I got to see what I've got. So as far as background fabrics go, you can definitely, I usually use solids for backgrounds. But if you are going to use a print, we're going to cut our fabric into strips. So you want to kind of disguise that we've cut our fabric into strips. You want to kind of hide that. So you don't want anything that's going to be too distracting. Like you wouldn't want to use a directional fabric like this as your background fabric, because these lines would end up going all different directions and it would be distracting. Even I wouldn't use something like this because you're going to have these seams where all of these grids don't line up, and then that's going to be distracting. Even, let's see, something like this, which is directional, it's going to be obvious if they're not all facing the same way. So good options would be something like added up. It's not directional. This pixel print, it's nice. I love this print with the hot pink. Actually, if I had enough of this, and I don't think I do, this may be what I would use, but I'm pretty sure I don't. Even this, like I've used this print in different colorways in several quilts, and I really like it because it's got more going on than your normal basic. The birds are bigger than, what you'd normally see with these dots or these squares or these plus shapes. But it's not directional. It's going in all different directions, and when you cut it up and sew it back together, you don't really notice where the seams are. My husband's singing to the dogs, so sorry about that. So some other options that I have in my stash, if I weren't going to cut just something from my stash, where I have this firefly jelly roll. So I could use this, and with this quilt, with this collection, I probably wouldn't want to use white as my background fabric, or if I did, a jelly roll usually has 40 strips and you only need 29 for the lap size. So if I were going to use this, I'd probably, and use a white background fabric, I'd probably pull the ones that are most similar to the white fabric out so that it didn't, those don't blend into the background. So I do really like this fabric collection, and I think I have a different project in mind for it, so I'm going to save it. And I have also a Spooky Darlings jelly roll, and I've already used one of these. I really liked it, so I got another one. And I also think I'm not going to use it for this. I'm going to save it. So I don't think I want to use it this time. But that one would be really fun too. I think I'm going to do this. Does anybody have any questions? I don't think anyone's asked anything. I've just been nervous talking really quickly. I did have some questions that people asked on a post, and I put a post up on my blog today that answered some of the questions. And I'll talk about that a little bit. One of them was, can you use a variety of different white solids to make kind of a scrappy background. And I like to do that on scrap quilts a lot. Actually, let's see if I can tilt this. I am in progress working on a scrap quilt right here. And it's hard to see from this video, but those white squares are actually different shades of white. And I had when I make a project, I have background fabric left over, like, a few inches. And I kind of build up this stash of all different shades of white background fabric. And so when I'm making a scrap quilt like this, then I'll use them because I don't really care. The quilt is scrappy. I don't care if the whites are all the same white. So if you wanted to do that, I did a mock-up that kind of showed what that would look like, and it would definitely have a different look, but I think it would still work. And then somebody else asked too if you could use 2 different background fabrics. And yes, I think you can do that. What that would do is in the block, you have background fabric on one side. I should have made a block so I could show you. Background fabric on 2 different sides. If you did one color here and one color here, it would create a different design. I did a mock-up and shared that on my blog. So all that's on the blog today. I don't think anybody posted any questions. You guys must be ready to go. I'm going to save this video. And if I can figure out how, I'll post it to YouTube because I know not everybody does Instagram. And tonight, if you signed up for the Quiltalong, I'll send out an email that will have a link to the blog post, and it will also have a link to this video. So if you have any further questions, let me know and I can do another video, or I can do another post where I can answer them. I think that the fabric selection for this quilt is pretty straightforward. It's, lots of different things will work. I did tons of mock-ups, and I will post a link to that blog post with all the mock-ups in my stories today, so you can go back through and see those. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Make sure you use the Phoebe Quiltalong hashtag if you post, and make sure you go through and comment on each other's posts.